now we're good.
Well, I was born in a small town, Kilrush, which is situated on the just very close to the west coast of Ireland. Population when I was born was approximately 3,000 people. It was poor, and at that time not alone had the worldwide depression started, but Ireland was engaged in an economic war with the United Kingdom, and as a result there was a great deal of emigration from the town. The road on which I was born, there were 8 houses on it, 6 of which were occupied by policemen. So it's pretty safe, but the town itself was pretty safe as well. Petty burglary was the closest they got to crime. I remember there was a man named Connie Sullivan, and the family in that family in the town were known as Connie Stole the Turkey. That was a major that was a major offence. Okay, I had 2 sisters older than me, so I was the last to be at home on my own, and at that time you had to be at least 4 years of age before you could be registered in a state school, and all the schools were state schools. But I was pestering my parents to go to school. I had an aunt who was a nun and who was teaching in the convent. So she was able to slip me in before I was 4 years old. And then I pestered her to get promoted. But that I didn't get away with that. But yeah, you know, we didn't.
Oh, I was going to say, do you want to talk about what your parents did?
Oh yeah, yeah. My father was he was the detective sergeant in the police force, and at that time, the part of the country in which we were living, the IRA were very active, and that was an important part of his job. I remember he was telling us there was one man who was a paid informer for them, and who was courier for the West Clare Brigade of the Irish Republican Army. And evidently the Irish Republican Army were at least suspicious. And my father said a light was seen in the river one night, and that man was never seen again. Presumably they weighed him down with stones or concrete and dropped him to the bottom of the river. And the river it wasn't a small river, it was the estuary of the River Shannon. It's probably 10 miles wide and I suppose a few hundred yards deep. So it wasn't a body that if it was weighed down with stones and concrete, it is highly unlikely that anyone would have seen it, and I have never heard that any of the remains have been found. Okay, about the time that I was born, there was a change in the government, and when a new government came in, and they were politicising the police force, and very quickly my father was reduced. He was reverted into the ordinary police force. He had been in the Special Crimes Branch. He reverted to the normal police force, and his rank was dropped to just entry level. And as well as that, he was transferred away from the hometown. So we were there, and his postings, some of them were about 100 miles from home at a time when 100 miles, there were very few cars on the road, so 100 miles was a long distance. He and a few others who were similarly treated felt this was unjust, and they hired a barrister to represent them against the government for wrongful action. The government, when they saw what was happening, I was going to say quickly, because it wasn't that quickly. It took, I would say, probably about 3 or 4 years before he was restored to where he had been earlier on. So as a result, I would say in my first 4 or 5 years, we would only see him on weekends. He would come home just about every weekend. My mother was a teacher. She was teaching 3 miles outside the town, and she would cycle up to the school and back every day. And I mentioned cycling because the wind was whipping in off the Atlantic. There was scarcely any vegetation, there were scarcely no trees, because the winds were so strong. Cycling, well, she was coming home from school one day, and there was a hill just outside the town, and she braked and went out on her head. And she was very lucky. For about a month, I remember we had a nurse in. She had to be minded day and night. And clearly it was swelling of the brain. In today's world, they would have been able to perform an operation. They wouldn't for her. She was a very patient person, and was not given to complaining. But I remember the shades were down in the room, and she could not stand any light for it was approximately a month, where her life was in the balance. I tell you that because life then, there weren't modern conveniences to help people out. And so anyhow, okay.